Hi Lauren, I'm going to start kind of toward the beginning of this one, and hopefully by the end I can get to your question down here at the end. First of all, it says to solve the following equation by completing the square. You don't have to complete the square on this if you don't want to. There's several ways to solve a quadratic equation. You could factor, if factoring works, which in this one it doesn't. You could complete the square, which is also often a pretty long process. You could also use the quadratic formula. So for this one, if I were to work this problem, I would go after the quadratic formula. So just a thought, maybe try the quadratic formula on this. You don't have to use completing the square because they don't know how you solved it. You still get the same answer in the end. But picking up where the problem began, we have 7x squared minus 7x minus 1 equals 0. Now usually when we start with completing the square, we can do one of a couple things. We could factor out a 7 here because we need the leading coefficient to be 1, or we can divide through by 7 as well. So there's a couple different options there. I'm not sure exactly how the book wants you to do that, either by factoring out a 7 or dividing by 7, because I cannot see this little part right here to see what they were trying to get you to do. So I'm going to show you by dividing through by 7. Now again, the reason we're dividing through by 7 is so the leading coefficient is equal to 0. So the 7's cancel here and I'm left with x squared minus x minus 1/7 equals 0. 0 divided by 7 is 0. Now when we complete the square, what I'll do is I'll move this negative 1/7 across. Now when you complete the square, what you're looking for is basically this term that makes this a perfect square trinomial. So that's what we're looking at so far. Well, what that term is half of the linear coefficient. Now this is an implied 1 right here, and half of a minus 1 is a minus 1/2. So this is how it factors. But if we were to FOIL this out, just kind of as a side note here, we'd get x squared minus 1/2 x minus 1/2 x plus 1/4 equals 1/7. Okay? Now we get the 1/4 because we have a negative 1/2 times a negative 1/2. Negative 1/2 x minus 1/2 x gives me the minus x up here. So the value that goes up here is 1/4. So if you add 1/4 to one side, you have to add 1/4 to the other. And that's getting us to that plus 1/4 over here as well. So that's kind of our checkpoint here. Now when we take the square root of both sides, I have x minus 1/2 equals plus or minus the square root of 1/7 plus 1/4. If we find a common denominator, and I can also add this 1/2 across, I can do that in one step. I get 4 plus 7 over 28. X equal 1/2 plus or minus. Now notice the square root sign goes to the top and the bottom, and that's kind of what you're talking about right here. Well, what they did is they simplified. So if we talk about the square root of 11 over the square root of 28, have x equal 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 11 over the square root of 28. But the square root of 28 is root 4 times root 7, because 7 times 4 is 28. So I get x equal 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 11, square root of 4 is 2 root 7. Now what we want to do is we want to rationalize that denominator. So we multiply top and bottom by root 7. So I end up with 1/2 plus or minus square root of 11 times square root of 11 times 7 is the square root of 77. Get my stylus to work here. And then the denominator, I have root 7 times root 7, which is the square root of 49. Square root of 49 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. So that's where they get that solution that they have right here, is they rationalize the denominator. They take this radical that's over both the numerator and the denominator, they split it up to the numerator and the denominator, they simplify root 28, and then they rationalize the denominator. I hope that helped. Good luck with your homework.